We got her. We got Queen Elizabeth Millner, Law&Crime's in-court reporter with us. Everybody's been waiting. All the questions are flowing in. Elizabeth, great to see you as we continue deliberations in the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial. Let's get right into it. This is from Corey Boone. I heard it was pandemonium on Friday, Elizabeth, when the family was leaving. Are there new rules on how the media public should conduct themselves during the verdict?
Oh, well, obviously we were all kind of told not to have any outbursts, not to say anything kind of, as far as like applause or as far as just an overtly emotional reaction. So we were told to pretty much keep quiet. But as far as pandemonium goes, I don't think it was necessarily the case on Friday during, closing argument at that point. And so from what I could tell just of the family's reaction, and by the way, Jesse, more of his family members did show up. And even though we're just getting jury notes at this point, we're not even at the verdict portion yet. I will say that a lot of his support system definitely made their way into that courtroom today, even though we're still waiting on a verdict at this point. So I hope that answers the viewer's question there.
We got another one coming in from Sylvia Nunez. How did the prosecution do in making the argument that victims of what is being alleged will have a soft spot for abusers? Does that question make sense to you? You get what Sylvia's asking, right?
I might need to do like a lawyer move right there and ask for a rephrasing of the question.
Yeah. So basically, I think it is that how did the prosecution do in making the argument that, look, these victims, Cassie, Jane, Mia, they may have conflicted emotions regarding Sean Combs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not victims of sex trafficking or violence of some kind. Or forced labor, if you're talking about Mia. They can still be victims despite the fact that they stayed in touch with him or wrote glowing messages to him or set things up. What was your take on how the prosecution explained that, how they got in front of that during closing arguments?
Well, I think it's a question that a lot of people have in their minds, right? Especially when you're talking about interpersonal conflicts, you're talking about interpersonal relationships. And I go back to a question that always remains, Jesse, is a lot of people do have is that, why don't they leave? If they could leave, why didn't they do that? And I think the government did a good job as far as sprinkling Dr. Don Hugh's testimony in during their closing argument as they were talking about why alleged victims don't leave, why they continue to stay, or even just that fear of leaving in general. So I think that they did a good job explaining it. It's all about how the jury's kind of interpreting it, though, because I'm sure that's a question in their mind, as it's been kind of a question in a lot of viewers' minds too. So I think the government did a good job, but again, it's up to the jury to talk about, to deliberate on whether or not they kind of agree too.
Elizabeth, what are the flavors of the Mr. Softy truck behind you? I see they might have vanilla, they might have Oreo as well. Sorry, I got distracted. Sorry, I see ice cream.
Told me there's a Mr. Softy truck behind me. I got excited.
If they played the music right now, we're doing great. Okay, we got a super chat question from Christina Lester. This is so kind, Christina. Please just tell Elizabeth how awesome it's been to watch her grow on this channel, so confident and beaming.
Oh, that is so sweet. Oh, yeah. That's so nice. Like, I know, truly the viewer support has just been so overwhelmingly nice. Like, I never know if you guys are going to like us or anything like that. So just the overwhelming support has truly been phenomenal. And we do look at a lot of your guys' comments. So I want to thank you all for watching, sticking with us being kind of your destination for all things Diddy and all things Diddy trial. So we love you all here at Law&Crime.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've got a question from Truman. Jesse, Elizabeth, a big thanks to you and all experts for your great job. Do you think the trial would give a reason for other celebrities to rethink their lifestyle? That's an interesting question.
That is a good question. That's a great question, actually. I think, a lot of celebrities might want to consider their actions. We're seeing just so many kind of court cases come about. When you go back to Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, we've seen civil complaints or civil lawsuits filed against legends like Smokey Robinson. Now we're seeing the Diddy trial, because remember, Jesse, when we were first started reporting on Cassie's lawsuit, and then that was settled, and just more lawsuits came that I think a lot of other celebrities should consider. I think, one, the way that they're treating others, especially the way that they're treating women, whether or not that their actions do constitute and possibly criminal actions or just terrible choices maybe too. But I think a lot of people, it's not even just celebrities, a lot of people need to kind of maybe, maybe take a little class or two just about their actions and how their actions definitely could have consequences. But we'll see if this is just the beginning or whether or not, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, other celebrities are going to be named. Like, that wasn't even the case in this particular trial. It related to victim 1 and victim 2, that being Cassie and Jane.
There was that testimony from Jane, right, about this other rapper who had a girlfriend or a wife and they were part of the lifestyle. And like, I think the point was from the defense, you got somebody else who might be engaging in the same thing, right? Why is that person not being brought up on sex trafficking charges? So I thought that was interesting when you think about it. I did want to ask you this.
Yeah.
What is Diddy's vibe been like? You know, every time he's entered into the court, what does he look like? Does he seem nervous? Has he been taking notes? What is his interaction with attorneys? You know, any behavioral things you've taken note of?
I've definitely been noticing he's been reading a lot since the jury went back to start their deliberations. Because obviously when I'm outside here, everyone's outside kind of doing their live reports and stuff like that. Diddy's not inside the courtroom. He's going back to, I think, what it's considered to be a holding cell, where he even told his attorneys that he just wanted to take a couple books back. And so when we see him come out of the kind of where he's been held up at, and when kind of he sees some of his attorneys, he sees his family, he sees the entire courtroom in the gallery, I think, one, he's happy to see his family. That's something that I've definitely been taking note of. But in terms of just his maybe possible nerves, they're not showing necessarily all over his face. But also, mind you, Jesse, that it's likely that the defendant is reading these jury notes, these jury messages, before we're even learning what they actually contain, because the lawyers, they get these messages first from the jury, so that way they can work everything out, they can think about their arguments, all of that stuff. So I'm sure if there was any type of questions that had concern for the defense, he's probably hearing about that in probably a private holding cell, probably digesting it then, and then when he comes out, sees the rest of us, he's probably putting on a strong face, especially for his family. I don't think he's putting on a strong face for us in the press, but I think as far as the support system goes, he's not going to show to my what I'm seeing inside the courtroom, kind of show any type of wavering in terms of just looking mad or looking annoyed or looking mad or concerned or any of that sort. So it's pretty hard to read him at this point, but I'm sure a lot's going through his mind, especially as more and more questions keep coming out.
Let's talk about that real quick. When I was reading that the jurors had asked for Ventura's testimony, if any, regarding interactions, freak-offs with Daniel Phillip, and Phillip's testimony regarding the Essex Hotel incident with Ventura, what jumped out to you about that? What do you think the jurors are trying to get a little bit more information about?
Well, it's interesting, Jesse, because I think if you think about the first question, it kind of had to do with RICO conspiracy, and now they're asking kind of things that pertain to sex trafficking, and I think in part two, to count two that's been alleged in the indictment. And so I think there are specific questions about Cassie in the Intercontinental Hotel, Cassie at Cannes, I know I always mispronounce it, and then the events that immediately followed afterwards, and plus Cassie's testimony in regards to the interaction with Daniel Phillip at a freak-off at her apartment, plus the Essex Hotel incident with Cassie and Daniel Phillip. I think their questions are very specific. And it's interesting too, Jesse, because I was sitting by one of the reporters inside, and I was going back through my notes even from just closing arguments, and the prosecution pointed out these specific instances in their closing argument. The Intercontinental Hotel that had happened in March 5th of 2016. They showed an exhibit photo of Cassie at the Cannes Film Festival, and then they even specifically talked about a particular freak-off where Sean Combs had punched Cassie and then kind of forced her to do a freak-off even after being physically violent with her. And so I'm wondering, a lot of people are talking about testimony and how far back it goes, but it seems like the jury really kind of took heed to the closing argument. And I think what's also interesting too, Jesse, is the whole Instagram post that's also going to go back to the jury too, something that's still on Cassie Ventura's Instagram page even to this day, just in regards to the outpouring of support that she had gotten after the Intercontinental Hotel surveillance video was released by CNN just last year, where she said in part, "Thank you all for the love and support from my family, friends, strangers, and those that I have yet to meet. The outpouring of love has created a place for my younger self to settle and feel safe now." But this is only the beginning. Domestic violence is the issue, and she capitalizes THE issue. It broke me down to someone I never thought I would become. So that's just in part of what the message reads. But it's also interesting because the defense pointed out the specific IG message. So it really seems like the jury really kind of took in what was said in the closing arguments, and now it seems like they'll be getting kind of the testimony from the few days before, the few days after, and they're going to get this Instagram post too that's going to be sent back with them. So it's interesting that the questions, a specific question too.
Yeah, they're definitely considering the evidence after all these hours. I think the deliberation is going to last quite some time, and it's very hard to gauge where the juries are, where the jurors are right now, what they might be thinking. By the way, the ice cream music did hit as well. I couldn't have planned that better. All right.
Oh, you heard it. Good.
Oh, I heard it. All right. Before I let you go, we got a super chat question. We got a super chat question from Augusto USA. Thank you so much. Hello, Elizabeth. I would like to know if Sean Combs has VIP treatment at his cell. Thank you. You guys rock. Congratulations. So sweet. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. I think in terms of in his cell, I think he's getting the treatment that a lot of other defendants are getting. You know, I don't want to make any assumptions because obviously I haven't seen his cell or anything like that, but I don't know if he's necessarily getting VIP treatment as much so as he's just kind of being treated like any other possibly high-profile defendant.
All right. So, Elizabeth Millner, thank you so much. I know you have to head back into court. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you later.
Yes. Thanks, Jesse.
All right, let's continue the conversation. Back here with Safa, back here with Tyler. We're going to have a lot more questions coming in. So, Safa, Heidi Hocking asks, how does the jury decide on a four-person?
Well, usually, and it depends. If it's in state court, it's usually the person that is juror number one, and the way that they're seated by the judge. In federal court, they will have a conversation and designate a conversation amongst themselves and designate who the four-person is going to be.
Yeah, and is that's a daunting job, right, Tyler? I mean, do they feel like they have to be the mediator, they have to lead everybody in the right conversation? I wonder if every day they say, okay, our objective today is to go through counts 3 and 5. Our objective today is to go through racketeering. What role do they typically play in this?
So the thing that's interesting, there's no syllabus for being a four-person. The judge declares that you're the four-person, and then you pretty much take leadership with that role, how you see fit. I mean, a good four-person really helps drive what they're going to be considering, drives the conversation, make sure everybody's heard, and then we'll continue to move the deliberations along. It's always been a dream of mine. I wish I could be a juror. I doubt anybody would ever select me to serve on the jury, but it's a four-person. They serve a specific role in really being a leader in the jury deliberation rooms.
I got a bunch of super chat questions coming in. Awesome super chat questions. Awesome questions in general. Safa, this is from Black Sigma. Thank you so much. This is fair, okay? Why was Cowboys for Angels not indicted or prosecuted as a criminal enterprise? Remember, this is the service that provided alleged sex workers in this case, male performers in this case. Why is Diddy the only one being charged in this racketeering conspiracy case? Why was Cowboys for Angels not indicted or prosecuted?
Excellent question. Honestly, that's a question that I myself have personally had with respect to this case. When we typically see RICO cases, we normally see a number of defendants. You can see anywhere from 2 to 15 to 20. It just depends. But I find it interesting, and this was a prosecutorial decision not to indict this company. I don't know why the answer to that is. Only they would know. But it is definitely a question that has come into my mind. if they are providing these alleged sex workers and receiving payment for these individuals' time and things of that nature. Why have they not been charged as a part of this enterprise? I think is a very great question.
And by the way, in the jury instructions, one of the things they were told is there were witnesses that weren't called. There were people who weren't called as witnesses, AKA, Christina Quorum. It wasn't mentioned specifically in the jury instructions, but you can't use that to infer anything. So, but look, these jurors are human beings. They might be wondering why other people weren't charged. Look, that was what the defense said. They said he's the only one charged in this. Who are the other co-conspirators? So it's interesting to think about that, or maybe Cowboys for Angels. Okay, super chat question for you, Tyler. This is from Jose Talavera. Thank you so much, Jose. Pretending thousands of people are not watching this, okay? In your personal opinion, is he guilty or not guilty?
Great question. I mean, when I'm on this show, I'm talking my personal opinion. I can care less about how many people are watching, but I think he's guilty of the charge that he's been accused of committing. If you look through the jury charges, if you read the actual statute, look at the verdict sheet, I think it's pretty hard not to convict him for at least the Mann Act violation. RICO, I think the way the jury verdict sheet looks, it's pretty hard not to even convict him for RICO because it's RICO conspiracy. The judge describe what a conspiracy is, and then you have 10 predicate crimes that you can choose from beneath that. So it's really hard, I think, for Mr. Combs to walk on this. And I personally feel that everybody's innocent to proven guilty, but the videos and the evidence and the testimony, it's kind of hard to ignore that.
Yeah, I've always said that I feel the transportation to engage in prostitution charges, if you look at the facts, look at the evidence and the testimony in this case, particularly now that the jurors, through jury instructions, they don't even have to accept that the men that were transported or allegedly transported, they didn't have to be sex workers. They don't have to be prostitutes. They're just, if there were completed sex acts, you get there. I mean, through the text messages, the audio messages, the Amex receipts, the testimony, it put Diddy at the center of it. And I think it's going to be very, very hard to make the argument that he didn't know this was illegal or he didn't know what was going on. So I think he's probably going to get convicted of those. Racketeering, toss-up. Sex trafficking, probably stronger with Cassie than there is with Jane. We shall see. Natalie Mejia has a super chat question. Thank you so much. Not even a question. Wow. Jesse and Elizabeth for president, vice president 2028. Well, first of all, that's very kind. Second of all, wow, really? That's where we're at. I mean, stranger things, but no, if that's who we're looking at, we got some more serious problems. But hey, this is not the politics show. This is a way to get out of politics a little bit. All right, got a super chat comment from Katie. Excellent reporting and discussions, Jesse. I always notice when you aren't here. That's very sweet. How do you think Combs is handling deliberations? Will KK be charged immediately if he's found guilty? Safa, look, I don't think necessarily she's going to be even a part of this case. I don't even think, or charged afterward. There is a question why she wasn't called as a witness. There is a question about what she needed when they have all of her text messages and you have so much testimony about her. I think he's probably very nervous right now. There's a difference between being charged, waiting for trial, going into the jury selection process, beginning the trial, and now you represent clients. How nervous are they when you now come to the main question? Will I be found guilty? And if I am found guilty, the likelihood of a successful appeal where the conviction could be overturned or my sentence could be overturned is not high. So there's everything at stake here. His whole life can change in any minute.
His entire life is at stake. And during the verdict watch process, everybody's on pins and needles. The defendant is, myself, or we as attorneys, we're all so nervous. The moment we hear that there's a note from the jury, everyone's stomach drops because we don't know if it's going to be a question or if it's going to be a verdict. So it is a very highly critical time right now, and everybody's nervous and everybody's on the edge of their seats. And you're right, Jesse, to your point, this moment is truly going to define what the rest of Mr. Combs' life looks like. And the likelihood of his conviction being overturned on appeal is probably not going to be likely unless there was some error that was done during the proceedings or by this lower court as it goes up on appeal to the Second Circuit, and ultimately wherever it may land after that.
Got a super chat question. Oh, we have Sierra Gillespie with us. Sierra, hi, good to see you. You're back. Okay, so Sierra, let's jump into the conversation. I want you to feel a part of this. And by the way, I'm sorry they didn't want you to be president or vice president, but I think that you are a part of this. I think you are a part of this administration. Whatever role you want.
I want to be in the cabinet.
You want to be in the cabinet? Secretary of State. How about that? Secretary of Defense while we're at it.
Please.
All right. We got a question.
Why not?
From Charles Menifee. Thank you so much, Charles. Did you cover the RICO? Did you cover the R. Kelly case? Because I get this question all the time. How does this case, this RICO case, differ from R. Kelly's case?
I did cover R. Kelly, actually, Jesse. If we wind the clock back 3 years ago, this very week is the first time I met Jesse Weber in person. I have it on my calendar. I got to mark it because it was a monumental day for me. Actually, it was my first time I met any of my Law&Crime coworkers because I was here in Manhattan. Actually, it was in Brooklyn, excuse me. It was in Brooklyn for the sentencing of R. Kelly. So I was there and I did cover it a bit. And I do remember when P. Diddy, even before he got indicted, when we first had these civil allegations, a lot of people were comparing the two. And I think they are similar in a way. There are definitely the differences between the two. How are we here? I mean, we heard Barrett in the last hour talking about, why it makes sense, the RICO charges here. And I tend to agree with her that it makes sense the reason that he's facing these charges. But I mean, I don't want to say R. Kelly walked so that P. Diddy could run in terms of the prosecution side of things. I'm not going to say that at all, even though I technically just did. I mean, there are big differences here. I don't know. I guess we can compare and contrast.
Well,